Hello, everyone. This is Maggie Dawson, Legacy Project Lead Coordinator at Advocates for Children CASA. Welcome to Module 3. In this module, we are going to be discussing the role of a legacy mentor. During this session, I am going to be giving an overview of the Legacy Project, and I will be discussing how youth become involved in this program. I will also be detailing what the role and responsibilities are as a legacy mentor. The Legacy Project is a program that was created in our office in 2006. Over the years, it has evolved, and in its current form, we serve youth ages 13 to 23. One thing to keep in mind is that the population that we serve in Legacy is the same population of kids that we serve in Dependency and Neglect CASA and in Truancy CASA. Many of our youth have a history of abuse and neglect, or the youth have also been identified as being at risk for other factors. For example, I have one young lady who's doing really well in school. She's involved in extracurricular activities. She's very sweet, but her family has a history of homelessness. And so she was referred to our program because she's been identified as at risk due to the family history. As I mentioned during our first module, please remember that our kids are our kids regardless of which program they participate in. A lot of our kids have a lot of trauma that they've experienced, and we just want to be mindful that regardless of system involvement, a lot of our kids really could use this extra support. Being systems involved is not an eligibility requirement for youth to participate in Legacy. What that means is that in order for a child to be assigned a CASA, there needs to be an open court case, whether that's a dependency and neglect case or a truancy case. That is not the situation here in Legacy. We are open to serving youth regardless of court involvement or regardless of system involvement. I am often asked, when would we assign a CASA volunteer versus when would we assign a mentor? So the first question we're going to evaluate is, again, whether or not there's an open court case. If there's an open truancy case, we will look at assigning a truancy CASA. If there's an open dependency and neglect case, we will look at assigning a dependency and neglect CASA. Reason being is with that court appointment, CASA volunteers are able to have access to a lot of confidential information that mentors are not necessarily allowed access to. The level of support a CASA is able to offer because of that court appointment just looks different than it does as a mentor. Mentors are not court appointed. Sometimes we do have mentors who are assigned to children who have open court cases, and those are exceptions that we have made. For example, a couple of months ago, I had a professional team reach out to me who was interested in assigning a mentor to a 17-year-old boy. This child's family does have an open court case. However, because of this young man's age, the professional team thought it would be really beneficial for him to have some one-on-one attention from a mentor and to begin working on some of the life skills that he will need as he transitions to adulthood. So right now he is on my mentor waiting list, and we're looking at assigning him a legacy mentor rather than assigning him a CASA. I've already mentioned that mentors are not court appointed, and the reason for that is that participation in the Legacy Project is voluntary for youth and families. The youth who are in Legacy have a choice as to whether or not they participate in this program. This program is intended to be an extra level of support for them. However, it is not mandatory, and that is something that I let youth know up front. Something that I would like volunteers to keep in mind with that is that there could be a point in the mentoring time that a youth decides that they do not want to participate in the mentoring program anymore. And that is fine. We want to be able to have conversations with that young person about what makes the most sense for their situation. For example, I have a teen girl who had been assigned a mentor, and she was originally assigned a mentor because she really needed some additional support with school and with having some positive peer influences. About 6 months into the mentoring year, she really had turned things around. She started thriving on a sports team. She also was being really successful academically and was receiving a lot of support she needed there. And she was overcoming a lot of the emotional challenges that she was having. And so she had made such progress that it was decided by her and her mom, the mentor, and myself that a mentor didn't make as much sense for her anymore. She didn't need that same level of support. So the mentor is no longer officially assigned to her, but is still available for phone calls or still available to be an informal support. And that is what that girl needs right now. So something to keep in mind for any potential mentors is that throughout the time, we're going to be constantly evaluating what makes the most sense in terms of support for that child and that family. The focus of the Legacy Project is goal setting. So a mentor is going to be assigned a youth, and they will be supporting that youth in setting and achieving goals. The intention is that this program will help empower young people and help them become more self-sufficient and to help them learn life skills. The goals that are set during this program are youth-driven, and they're specific to individual circumstances. Clearly, 13 to 23 is a pretty broad age range, and a 13-year-old's goals are going to look very different from an 18-year-old's goals. And so that's something that a mentor can help a youth figure out. They can begin to talk about that youth's individual circumstances and decide what makes the most sense for them. For some of our older youth, they really need some practical life skills. They need to know where to find safe housing. They need to know how to budget. They need to know how to apply for jobs. Those are some of the tangible skills that older youth might need support with. Rather, our younger youth often really need a lot of emotional support. I've had several young people referred to Legacy who are 13 and 14, and they're referred because they really struggle with emotional regulation. So part of what mentors can help them do is identify positive coping skills and learn how to navigate their anger or their sadness or their frustrations in a healthy way. Youth become involved with the Legacy Project through a referral process. Again, there's no open court case, so I need to wait until youth come to me before we can move forward in assigning them a mentor. Referrals can come from any source of the community. Our referral forms are available on our website, and all of our staff members have access to a copy of them as well. We often have community partners who will reach out to a contact they have in our office, and they will let our staff know that they have a youth in mind for Legacy and they think that they could benefit from a mentor, and that our youth is able to send the referral form along to that community partner. I do want to mention that a lot of the referrals that I have received in the last several months are for teen boys. So I'd like to give a shout out to any men in our training class. I could really use some male mentors right now. I have a few boys on my mentor waiting list who are required to have male mentors for safety reasons. I also have a few boys on my waiting list who are being raised by single moms. I had one single mother look me square in the eye before we started shelter in place, and she told me that she would love for her son to participate in this program, but it didn't make sense for him to take the time to do so unless he had a male mentor because he already has a lot of female adults in his life. These young men really could use positive male role models. So if you're a man going through this training, I would really encourage you to consider this as an option for your volunteer service with us. As soon as I receive a referral, I begin following up with whoever wrote that referral to gather as much information as possible. Again, this is not an open court case. So in dependency and neglect cases and in truancy cases, there are court documents that come along with that case that provide some context. We receive information on family histories. We receive information on parents' treatment plans. We also receive information through the petition on what led to that case being open. We have an understanding of what the history of abuse and neglect is. We do not have that wealth of information in legacy. So when I receive a referral, the first thing that I do is I try to follow up with as many questions as possible to get some more context as to why this young person could use a mentor. Once the referring party has provided all the information that they are able to, then I start following up with the youth and the family to schedule an intake. So for some context, I mentioned that referrals can come from a variety of sources in the community. This pie chart gives you an indication of some of the people who have submitted referrals to me in this fiscal year. So starting July 1st, 2019. The largest section is from the Juvenile Assessment Center. The Juvenile Assessment Center is a community partner of ours. They predominantly work with families who have children who have had some sort of encounter with law enforcement. This fiscal year to date, I've received 14 referrals from the Juvenile Assessment Center. The second largest section of referrals is the light gray section, and that corresponds to Department of Human Services caseworkers. Caseworkers are sometimes assigned to families on what's called a voluntary basis, which means there's not an open court case. We also have some families who become involved with the department because of juvenile delinquency cases. So caseworkers will reach out to me and see if we can find some additional support through a mentor that way. And then the third and fourth largest sections come from foster parents and from placement providers. So sometimes people with whom the child is living have recognized that that child can use more support, and they will reach out to us and ask for a mentor. I do want to highlight that I have received referrals from staff at the CASA office. I've received referrals from former CASAs, and I've also received referrals from parents. So really anybody is allowed to fill out a referral if they think a young person could use a mentor. After I have followed up with the referring party and I have the information that I'm able to gather there, I work on what is called the intake process. So that is when I get to meet the child or the young person that is being referred to Legacy for the first time. Depending on what that youth's circumstances are, I might be able to meet with their family, their placement provider, which could be a foster parent or a kin placement or a group home leader. And I can also meet with any professionals that are associated with that young person. By professionals, I mean caseworkers, attorneys, probation officers, and sometimes therapists. During my first meeting with the youth, I described to them what the Legacy Project is. I explained that it is a 1-year mentoring program and that's intended for the youth to receive some additional support and to be able to identify and set some goals that he or she would like to work on for that year. A big part of this meeting is so that I can gauge a youth's interest. I really emphasize that this program is voluntary, that the court is not ordering them to participate, school is not mandating that they participate. It is up to the youth to decide whether this would be helpful for him or her. I also lay out the program expectations. I explain to the youth that this program is meant to last for 1 year. I explain that the intention is to focus on goal setting and accomplishing goals. And I explain that our hope is that the mentor and the youth would be able to meet for 10 hours a month during that mentoring year. Once the youth has told me that they think that this would be helpful and they're interested in participating, then we move forward with the intake. One of the things that I try to explain to the youth and their families or the professionals is that there is typically a wait time for a mentor. As I mentioned during the first module, we are heavily dependent on our volunteers. Right now, I have a waiting list of 8 youth who need a mentor. As I said just a second ago, the majority of those are young men. And so I have been very upfront with families in letting them know that the wait time for a mentor is typically 2 to 3 months, and it can be longer if that youth needs a male mentor. After we've gone over a lot of the program details and I've answered any questions that anybody has, then I do an assessment. The assessment is a questionnaire in which I am able to ask several questions that correspond to the key program areas of legacy, and I will detail those in the next few slides. Part of what this questionnaire helps me do is assess what the youth's knowledge is and what their skills are so that I can identify potential areas of support that a mentor can offer. So the key components of a legacy mentor. The first thing that I want you to know is that even though mentors are not court-appointed special advocates, there are still opportunities for mentors to advocate for their youth so that they can achieve success. There's this one story that I have in which I had a mentor who was working with a young lady, and she and her parents were having a lot of conflict. And about a year ago, the situation escalated so that this young lady ended up running away from home for the night. And her parents were really scared and they didn't know how to support her. What ended up happening is that this young lady ended up needing to do a mental health evaluation, and she was in a residential treatment center for 3 days. During that 3 days, her mentor went and visited her, and they had a long conversation about what that girl needed, what would be helpful for her so that there wasn't this ongoing conflict with her parents. And what came out of that conversation was that this girl was feeling really overwhelmed with school. She felt like she was not getting the support that she needed academically. So her mentor came back to me and very passionately and very emphatically told me that we needed to find a tutor for this girl. So I was able to work with Nancy, who was overseeing our tutoring program at the time, and we were able to identify a tutor to match with this girl. I'm happy to report that they have been working together for almost a year now. This tutor is still very actively involved with this young lady. They are meeting regularly online to help support her with online school during shelter in place. And her first mentor moved out of state rather unexpectedly. And so her tutor, in addition to being her tutor, has offered to be her mentor as well and is able to provide her some additional emotional support. And all of that was possible because this girl's first mentor felt the need to advocate for her and was able to really clearly identify a resource that this young lady needed. We want our mentors to help youth set and achieve goals for their young people and develop and work on what is called an individual learning plan. I will walk you through this document if you become a mentor, but this document is really the foundation of your mentoring year together. It's an opportunity for you and a young person to identify potential goals and to be able to structure subsequent visits towards achieving those goals. One resource that I want to call attention to is our Legacy Mentor Guide. I mentioned during the first module that I am available as a resource for any volunteer who is working on a teen case. I also want any volunteer working on a teen case to know that the tools that we have available through Legacy are also available to you as a volunteer. And one of those tools is the Legacy Mentor Guide. On our website, we do have a link for it. It is a large document that's a compilation of resources that has been accrued over the years. Every 3 months, I go through each and every one of the resources. I make sure that the links are still viable, and I add additional resources that I have learned about in the previous 3 months. Please refer to that. It is extremely helpful, and it's very eye-opening to see the amount of wonderful organizations that are available in our community to help young people. And there's also a lot of really great online resources that you can use that could be helpful during this time as well. The 6 key program areas of the Legacy Project are permanency and relationships, health and self-care, education and career, housing and money management, daily life skills and self-sufficiency, and self-esteem and self-efficacy. Not all of these program areas are as relevant to youth as others. So, for example, we have a couple of 13-year-olds in our program who are not old enough to start working yet. So, finding affordable housing and learning how to create a budget isn't as large of a need for them as it is for some of our older youth. However, these younger youth mostly could use some support in developing positive self-esteem and increasing their self-efficacy. Some of those younger teens also really need help with permanency in relationships and learning how to navigate positive peer relationships and finding positive ways to support others in their lives. One of the things that legacy mentors do is they conduct mid and post program assessments. So I mentioned that I complete an assessment during the intake, and then mentors will do follow-up assessments at the 6 and 12-month mark. Those are great tools that we can use to check in and see what progress has been made on the goals, and to also evaluate whether the goals that were set at the beginning of the year are still relevant, or whether we need to add new goals or tweak pre-existing goals. Mentors can help identify strengths, personal interests, and areas for increased achievement. I have one young lady who's finishing up her mentoring year right now, and when I did her intake assessment, she couldn't tell me what her hobbies were. I asked her what she liked to do for fun, and she really struggled to answer that question. So one of the goals that she set with her mentor was trying one new thing a month to try to figure out what it was that got her excited, what it was that made her passionate. And pretty early on, the mentor stumbled across the fact that this girl loves art. She loves to paint, she loves to draw. She's a very creative young lady. And so a lot of what her mentor has done throughout this past mentoring year is help connect her to resources and ideas so that she can tap into that creative outlet and be able to really do something that is helpful for her emotionally. And finally, all of our volunteers can help our young people promote resilience. Our kids are involved with our agency for a reason. They have struggles, they have really difficult things that they are facing. So as volunteers, regardless of which program you're in, you have the opportunity to help youth see obstacles as opportunities, and you can help them build confidence and perseverance. I've already mentioned this, but legacy mentors are not court appointed. The access to information that they have will be more limited. When you start a case, very often I have mentors ask me follow-up questions about a young person's family, about possible criminal charges that child has, what sort of therapy they're participating in. And there are many times that I have to tell a mentor I don't have that information. So part of what mentors can do is as they're building that relationship with the child, they can be learning that information. Mentors are assigned to youth for a 12-month period rather than for the life of an open case. On that note, 12 months is our starting point. If a mentor and a youth are clicking, if they're getting along really well, then we are very open to extending that time, and we would love to extend that time. If you are interested in moving past the 12-month period with a youth you are assigned through Legacy, one thing that we will need to do is to make sure the youth is on board for that and that new goals are set for the subsequent year. But we are very open to exploring the possibility of a longer pairing. Depending on the youth situation, a mentor might still interact with a professional team. I have a young man right now who is in department custody. There is not an open dependency neglect case, but he has a pretty robust professional team. And so his mentor, who's just starting, is going to need to make sure that he communicates with the professional team on a pretty regular basis. For some of our young people, we have youth that have juvenile delinquency cases and they're on probation. So they might not have a full professional team, but a mentor might still need to interact with a probation officer. And a mentor might also be asked to find ways to help support that person through probation and to fulfill any requirements that he or she has. Teens assigned a CASA can attend any Legacy events, And one thing that I really want you to be thinking about is if you are assigned a teen, whether it's through truancy or whether through dependency and neglect, you have the option of staying assigned to that teen after the case has closed. So if you've really established a good connection with that teen and you think that they could use some ongoing support after that case is closed, you have the option of transitioning to being a legacy mentor. So please keep that in mind and please have that conversation with your case coordinator if that's something that you would like to explore, and we would be able to work with you for that transition. There is a lot of documentation associated with legacy mentors. Even if you're not court appointed, we still have business to take care of. As I mentioned, the legacy referral is the document that kicks this whole process off. All of the documentation that is listed here is going to be stored in Optima, our online database. And so after you are assigned to a teen, you will have the opportunity to log into Optima and review all of the documents that are listed here, including the legacy referral. We will keep the intake assessment, the mid-program assessment, and the post-assessment in Optima as well. As I mentioned, I complete the first assessment and then mentors complete the others. The individual learning plan is the goal setting sheet. One thing I like mentors to know is that this is a living document. So we will set goals as soon as we can in the beginning of the mentoring year, but throughout the mentoring year, I will be having conversations with the mentors about those goals and evaluating them. Do those goals still make sense? Has a youth already accomplished their goals, so we need to set new goals? So that document is constantly a work in process, but it's a really helpful guide so that you can structure visits with your young person. The Legacy Mentor Resource Guide is available on our website. Please use that. It's a really helpful tool. Mentors are also responsible for writing contact logs, which are due the 5th of every month. And even though we don't write court reports, we do write quarterly mentor reports to help us review how that young person is doing and to evaluate what support we can offer moving forward. So, accepting a legacy mentor case. So, as I mentioned, during training, you are going to have the opportunity to fill out a case preference form. If you mark legacy as one of your options, I will be looking through the kids on my waiting list and seeing if I have a good potential match for you. Once swearing in has taken place, then I will contact you and see if we can set up a time to do what we refer to as a case pitch. During that case pitch, I will describe to you what that child's needs are, who that child is, and why they were referred to legacy in the first place. Prior to getting to that point, I do want you to know that we are very careful in which cases we assign volunteers. If we have safety concerns that are extreme, we will not assign a volunteer to those cases. So please keep that in mind. We vet our cases before we pitch them to you. You're still welcome to vocalize any concerns that you have, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to work through any reservations you might have. Volunteers have the option of saying no to a case. Again, we want volunteers to be assigned for the long haul. We want volunteers to be assigned as long as a case is open, if it's dependency, neglect, or truancy, and we want volunteers to be assigned for the full year if it's a mentoring case. So please take your time. As soon as we share this information about the case with you, don't feel pressured to answer right away. You're welcome to take a couple of days and mull it over, but we really want you to feel comfortable with the case that you were assigned. Once a mentor has accepted the case, then I will move forward with assigning you to that case in Optima, and that will allow you to have access to those documents that we previously discussed. We will then begin discussing areas of support for that youth. We'll begin brainstorming possible goals that that youth might want to set. That way the mentor can already be thinking about what their role might look like. And then we're going to work on scheduling what is called a mentor introduction meeting. That mentor introduction meeting is the first time that a mentor will be able to meet that young person. They'll also meet family members, placement providers, or any relevant members of a professional team. Clearly, we're still under shelter in place, And so if meetings are not able to take place in person, we will get creative and talk about what that looks like, whether it's a video conference or a phone call. Introducing yourself as a mentor. When you meet your kid for the first time, it can be a little daunting. As staff, we are required to all take our own personal cases. I have attended many mentor introduction meetings, and I always have the advantage because I've already met that young person. And so I'm able to be there as a support for the mentor who's meeting this kid for the first time. But I can say I know as a volunteer, it was a little intimidating for me to meet the kids on my personal case for the first time. It's a very unique relationship, and it's a little hard navigating those first conversations. So please don't worry if you're a little nervous. I'll be there to be a support for you. One of the things that you can do to help break the ice is just be upfront about the fact that you're a volunteer. Youth tend to respond really well to knowing that you're a volunteer and that you're not being paid to spend time with them. They understand that you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, and that tends to really break down some barriers. A lot of youth might be curious about why you want to volunteer as a mentor. So feel free to be genuine, be open, honest. This is an opportunity for them to get to know you and you to get to know them and their families. One thing that I've seen that works really well with older youth is making sure that the youth know that they have a say in how you spend your time together, reminding them that this program is meant for them. You're not doing this for you, you're doing this to support them, and you want to hear what they have to say about the time that you spend together. That's really empowering for our young people, especially those that haven't had a lot of choices in their lives. And I've seen youth respond really well to that message. One of the things that we'll cover during a mentor introduction meeting is a recap of what the program expectations are and what the time commitment looks like. I will also help facilitate conversations about what communication methods make the most sense, and we'll begin to talk about what a tentative schedule for visits could look like. The main purpose of this meeting, again, is to just let the youth know that you are there for them and to give them an opportunity to get to know you and ask questions. This is with your legacy youth. So that first meeting is the mentor introduction meeting that I just described. The first few visits are really meant to build rapport, really getting to know each other. I recognize that this is a little awkward. This is the first time that you're getting to know each other. So feel free to do something fun. Do an inexpensive activity. Maybe go for a walk in the park or go out to lunch when we're allowed to do that again. I have one mentor who just met her kiddo right before shelter in place went into effect. And so they're still kind of getting to know each other. And one of the things they're looking at doing is watching movies together online and then talking about them. So they're finding creative ways to get to know each other. Within 30 days of the mentor introduction meeting, I want the mentor to be working on the individual learning plan with the youth and identifying and setting some goals. For subsequent visits, I want the mentor and youth to be finding activities that support those goals. You're not always going to be working on the goals. You might want to break it up with a movie day or something fun like a hike. But for the most part, the activities and visits that are planned should be focused on what that youth's goals are. And then throughout the mentoring year, you will also be conducting the mid and post-program assessments. That's an overview of the Legacy Project. I hope that you have a better understanding of what the program entails and how youth become involved in the program. And I hope that you have an idea of what the role and responsibilities are as a Legacy mentor. As you digest this information, I really encourage you to be thinking about the differences between a Legacy mentor and a dependency and neglect CASA. Please write down any questions that you have and be thinking about what role you feel like would be a better fit for you. I'm really looking forward to talking to you more during the webinar and answering any questions that you have about this volunteer opportunity. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to visiting with you all soon. Bye.